Rather providential for a day of farewell, because that beautiful passage from the prophet Isaiah, that even if a mother should forget her infant, the Lord will not forget us. I will never forget you. And those words really hopefully reverberate the feelings of my own heart, that I will never forget you. I may not know all of your names, and that's a given, but I will not forget you. I will not forget the Diocese of Baker. I will not forget all of the wonderful times and events and occasions that we have shared together over these past 11 years. I will never forget you. The second reading, tells us, don't be passing judgment. Certainly there is room for judgment, good or ill, positive and negative, and yet ultimately we leave it all in God's hands and trust that the motives of our hearts will be clearly revealed, and that which is done with good will and good heart and good intention stands before God as a grace and a blessing. And if there is fault and flaw, God will take care of that in His own inestimable way. And then the final reading, the Gospel. I'm sure today your questions are not, what are we going to eat or what are we going to wear? The question is, who's going to be our bishop? We don't know. But what we do know is that which we trust and that which is revealed to us in the earlier readings is that God will not forget us. God will never abandon us. God will never leave us orphans, at least not for long. And so we have trust and confidence. And the same trust and confidence that we express in that passage from Isaiah, that the Lord will never forget us, gives us courage and confidence to move forward and say, we don't know who the bishop will be, but we do know with faith and with confidence that he will be good for us. He will be just what we need. He will provide for us the leadership, the guidance, the shepherding that we long for and need in our hearts, because that's how God takes care of us. Perhaps never quite in the way that we would like, but always hopefully in the way that we need. God watches out for us. God takes care of us. And certainly in times like this, there is a room for kind of sadness, perhaps even grief. And I know for me there is both of those, sadness and grief. And yet those in many ways do not trouble me. I'm dispassionate enough and hopefully confident enough in God to know that God, who has in many wonderful ways provided for my tranquility and happiness over the course of my years, will again be a God of compassion and strength, and He will not leave me an orphan either. I leave a beloved place and many beloved people, and my heart will ache for a time. But I am trusting that God will again abundantly bless me, because He promises us that no one who leaves father, mother, brother, sister, homeland for my sake or for the sake of the gospel will be long suffering, that they will receive a 100-fold reward in this life and eternal life besides. I trust that, and I believe that with my whole heart. And so it fills me with a kind of maybe eagerness for what the Lord has now in store. Because in many ways we must trust and believe that the Lord always has something better in store for us. And even if it entails a great deal of suffering, we can look at that suffering, that hardship, that grief with the kind of hope that says, this too is the best thing for me. We must trust that. We must believe that, because it's the truth that God always watches out for us. And as long as we know that God is watching out for us, then everything that happens, all that comes to pass in the course of this world, is very manageable. It's true that the Lord's yoke is easy and the Lord's burden is light, provided we remember that He who gives us that yoke and that burden is a God who loves us with an inestimable love and who watches out for us, guards us, who has, as the prophet says, carved us literally in the palm of His hand, and He will not forget us. We need to know that, trust that, and hold on to that, because that's the truth. In my time here, I have been privileged and blessed in many, many wonderful ways, and one of the great blessings for me, besides the people of God of the diocese in general, has been a marvelous body of men and women who have worked with me in the Chancery office. And they are a rich and abundant blessing for me. And I count them all as my closest collaborators and dearest friends. And I know that my leaving them leaves them much more lost than all of you feel together. Yeah. And they ask that question more ardently than others: who's going to come in your place? Because that person has a pretty direct impact on them. Yeah. Because they're the ones that He will be working with. To you I say, I love you. I will miss you. And I trust with, again, a wonderful confidence in God that the one who comes after me will be even more delightful for you. And you will befriend him as you have befriended me, and he will serve and interact with you and even better, I hope, than I have served and interacted with you. You have been a grace and are a grace and a blessing for me. There's a wonderful movie, and I'm sure you've seen it. And actually, I've never seen the movie, but I've heard the lines from it. I think it's My Side of the Mountain, The Other Side of the Mountain, something about a mountain. And I think Beau Bridges starred in that. Was that Beau Bridges? No? Somebody. Anyway, he is in a serious skiing accident and is injured, and kind of nurses this person back to health, and then he's leaving in a plane, and as the plane crests over the mountain, it crashes and he dies. And it's like this horrible ending to a movie, and the line that I remember is simply this: how blessed we are to have known someone to whom it is so difficult to say goodbye. We count our blessings. We count our blessings. I count my blessings that it's difficult for me to leave here, but that is a difficulty which I count as a blessing because it means that I have been privileged to know people, to work with people, to interact with people to whom it is very difficult to say goodbye. And I suspect that some of you, perhaps even most of you, hold in your heart a kind of sadness. But I hope you see in that sadness a blessing, that you count yourself blessed by God, because this moment is so difficult. Wouldn't it be terrible to arrive at this moment and say, thank God he's finally gone? What a horrible sadness that would be. So the blessing of relationship means that, yes, the parting is sorrowful, but don't focus on the sadness, the loss, the grief. Focus on and remember the joy, remember the grace, remember the blessing. And I pray that all of you can say in your heart, how blessed we have been to have had for our shepherd, for this brief moment in our life history, someone we find difficult to let go of, to say goodbye to say farewell. In that we know that we have been blessed. And in that we must rejoice. Rejoice with a joy founded in trust in God, in trust in His goodness, in a firm belief that God will again bless us, and that at some point in eternity we will arrive at that wonderful point at which we can finally say with great relief, at last, no more goodbyes. At last, I can enjoy without fear of loss all that God has given me. You are a grace and a blessing to me, and I do, without hesitation and without doubt, count myself among men the most richly blessed. God bless all of you. Thank you for joining us today, and I pray that our memories together uphold us into an indefinite future and help us live life more joyfully and more faithfully.